Stan, we're live.
Thank you, Larry, the Liberty Guy. Welcome back to another edition of In the Dugout. I'm your host, Mike Stenhouse. Historic day today. Before we get to that, we're in the dugout, so we wear our sports, our favorite team paraphernalia. Today I'm going full Rhode Island, my URI cap, where both my parents and one of my sons went to school, and many friends. And of course, it's Green Bay Packer week as they play and host the NFC Championship game. If you don't know it already, you'll be sick of it eventually, but I am a massive Green Bay Packers fan. So go Pack, go. All right, today, wow, historic day. We're going to talk about, there were a lot of, as we discussed yesterday, there are a lot of expectations for what might happen today. Especially, we wondered about the military presence. We wondered about some of these, why they were there. Was it some kind of show of force by the Democrats, or was it some kind of pre-positioning for some kind of military action, martial law by the president? There was all kinds of questions. Well, they've all been answered. Nothing happened. Nothing happened. Just like we kind of told you yesterday, nothing was going to happen. But I'll talk a little bit about the inauguration. A little later on, I might talk a little bit about some of Trump's accomplishments, whether or not Biden's going to be able to or try to undo some of them, as well as some of Biden's agenda. My main message today, which we'll get to second on the show, is a message to conservatives. We're a conservative think tank. We're a free market think tank. Libertarians tend to like us too. So many people were so sad, so doomed for the future feeling with Biden going in as president, with the Democrats controlling both chambers of commerce, and with the disappointments and false hopes maybe raised after the election. Everybody's down today. And it's okay to be a little dispirited at times. But the fact is, conservatives, we are winning. Okay? We are winning. And I'm going to tell you about that in just a little bit. Our last segment of the show today will be with somebody I've only met in the last year, but he's somebody I have great respect for. He is a leader. He is smart. He runs a think tank in Massachusetts, the Mass Fiscal Alliance, and he is the regional coalition leader against the TCI gas tax. This is actually a travel coffee mug or drink mug that we got when we went to a meeting in Boston just a year ago to talk about our regional coalition that he organized. And so Paul Craney will be our guest in the last 15 minutes, and we're going to talk about this horrid TCI gas tax idea that Governor Raimondo has signed us onto. So that's our show today. Tomorrow, as is normal on Thursdays, I haven't confirmed it yet, but we're hoping to have Dr. Andrew Bostom on to discuss all things COVID. In the second half of the show, the final 30, 40 minutes, we'll catch up on any news of the day or other commentary in the first part of the show. Just quickly on a Rhode Island news item until we get to the main part of the show. Just in the last day, a few dates have been clear with regard to Rhode Island. We had a transition of power in Washington. Well, there's going to be a transition of power here in Rhode Island in the coming weeks with Gina Raimondo leaving to likely become Commerce Secretary, and with Dan McKee to soon assume the reins as governor. So a few dates were put forth. Apparently, Gina Raimondo's Commerce Secretary cabinet confirmation hearing in the United States Senate will be next Tuesday, the 26th. Don't know if she'll actually be confirmed that day. Don't know if if and when she'll actually begin as Rhode Island governor. But we do know that the other date she is planning, and I think this is a little odd. I think it's wrong. She is planning to deliver the State of the State address to Rhode Island on February 3rd. Now, this is a governor who has had exposure every day, every week anyway, with the COVID, with her weekly press conferences. We've got a transition of power. The new governor should give the state of the state and put forth his vision. Whether he's actually the governor or not yet, he should be at least sharing that stage. In fact, I would think taking it over. I mean, we're in unprecedented times here, so I don't know what the protocol calls for this for. But does anybody really care what Gina Raimondo has to say right now? She's on her way out. She's left us. She's left us years ago. She's out of here. I'm not going to say betrayal, but she's out of here. Why do we care? All she can do is give a rehash of the past. It's not her right anymore to give a vision of the future for Rhode Island. And the state of the state is supposed to be visionary. Here's what I plan to do in the next year. That's now going to be soon to be Governor Dan McKee's job. Why the hell is Gina Raimondo giving the state of the state? She's hogging the spotlight. Again, these people, the egos on these people are unbelievable. So those are the two dates. Confirmation hearing next Tuesday, the 26th, state of the state, February 3rd. I'm hoping public pressure can maybe change the governor's mind on that. All right, we had a very historic day today. Listen, you like it or don't like it, it's a historic day. It's the greatest of American traditions, the peaceful handover of power from one administration to another. Now, today was probably unlike any other inauguration. There were some historical things that happened today, which I'll list for you shortly, and there were some unprecedented things that happened today as well. For instance, there was no personal handover. There was no Trump to Biden personal handover. The peaceful transition happened. Staffs worked together behind the scenes. I mean, so that didn't happen today. But I got to listen. Did I watch? I didn't watch a lot of the inauguration today. I saw some of the pre-setup. I heard some of Biden's speech, most of his speech. I didn't watch a lot of the aftermath. I certainly can imagine the fawning and the adoration and the thrills up the legs of the commentators at CNN and MSNBC, maybe even Fox now. But so I have to admit, I didn't watch a lot of that. And if you'd like to chime in or make a comment on anything that jumped out at you, put it live here in the YouTube comments, and I'll try to get to it. But it was a weird day. It was a weird day being virtual in the COVID era. Was it was it a non-in-person major event because of COVID? Or was it like the campaign where the Biden team just didn't think they'd get many people to show up? I mean, if you listen to Biden's speech today, well, first of all, let's just look at this. Let's just look. Hold on one second. I'm a little, okay. Washington Post. Do you think they loved? Do you think they loved the speech? Look at this. One of the best speeches in inaugural address, recent memory. Washington Post. What else would you expect him to say? I thought it was horrid. I mean, how a guy with that little charisma, how a guy who can do nothing but repeat trite, tired platitude after trite, tired platitude could possibly have received 80 million votes is beyond me. I'm supposed to believe that. I don't believe that, but you know what? There's nothing you can do about it. Not even Donald Trump could do anything about it. It's behind us now, except except for trying to fix election problems for future elections. But that speech was horrid. But the Washington Post calls it the best in memory. We're going to get more into why it was horrid a little bit later. But first, let's talk about some of the other kind of historical or unprecedented things that happened today. It was the Vice President Kamala Harris, right? Is that the right way to say it? Kamala Harris became the first female vice president. Became the first African-American vice president. First Lady, Dr. Jill Biden, will be the first active college professor while in the White House. But she's not a doctor of medicine like a lot of people think. She got a master's degree in education. I want you to think. Joe Biden, just the second Catholic president. I heard that he put his hand on the Catholic Bible. Joe Biden's not the first socialist sympathizer. We've had some of them before. Like the kind of along the lines of the personal transition president, the scenes we were used to seeing in the past where, the incoming president would walk the outgoing president along with their wives. Soon someday we'll say spouses to their cars, to a limo as they leave, and one enters the White House, one leaves. Well, that didn't happen today because Donald Trump wasn't there for the ceremony. So instead it was the vice president and her husband escorting now the former vice president, Mike Pence, and his wife, Karen, I believe is her name, to the motorcade. So that tradition typically carried out by presidents was half fulfilled today. And then I guess it all ended, and I honestly said I didn't see any of it. But apparently, instead of the physical parade we're used to seeing on Inauguration Day with the presidential reviewing stand and then the bands and all the people groups walking by, that was not done today either. Instead, they had a virtual parade, a parade apparently called Parade Across America. And I guess it featured key entertainment and Hollywood figures, as well as showcases. I don't know what that means. Skits, comments, I don't know. Pictures, I don't know what that meant. Type in here if you know what it meant. But apparently showcases and performances from each of the 56 American states and territories. That was the parade across America. The virtual parade across America. So another oddity and newfangled to this year's inauguration. And of course, we showed you the fawning and the adoration that is just going to become, let me say, it's going to become sickening. And it's going to be completely opposite of the 4 years of attacks you saw every day on Donald Trump, whether he deserved them or not. I'm just saying it's going to be different. And it's already begun. We showed you the Washington Post article. Here is our illustrious Congressman David Cicilline. Here's his comment on the Biden inauguration, a great day for Rhode Island. They're going to do magical things in Never Never Land. Vice President Biden President Biden, get used to that. President Biden and Vice President Harris. They're going to end the pandemic, build our economy back better. Yeah, okay, we'll see about that. Lower the cost of healthcare. Only if they give it away free as part of the universal healthcare. Root out corruption. The corrupt ones are pledging to root out corruption. Okay, that's going to be a good one. Secure racial justice. Of course, that's the one. That's the one that should have been first. End gun violence. Watch out. Watch out, Second Amendment. Hold on to your Second Amendment right now. And take on the challenge of climate change. An anti-taxpayer, anti-jobs, anti-culture agenda that somehow David Cicilline thinks is going to lead to more prosperity in the day. This is the never land that the left lives in, that we spoke pretty much the whole show about yesterday. So let me talk. So, when you think of before we go there, before I get to my message for conservatives, let's just look at this little funny. I thought this was a good one. I hope you don't mind me calling them funny comics. The comic strips on the back of the paper, I used to call them the funnies. I don't know what you call them. I mean, that's probably an old term, but the comic strips, back when we were kids, we didn't have digital funnies. You got to look at a book or a newspaper, and we love the columns, little cartoon strips on the back. We call those the funnies. I don't know if that's even a term that anyone else used, but that's what I call them. Anyway, but here's a good one. The guy's reading the paper 2021. It looks like it's the same headlines of 2020. I mean, you could add to that pandemic cases on the rise, whatnot, mask mandates. But this poor lady goes, man, is it really 2021, or is this just an extension of 2020? So, and I don't know what kind of change Joe Biden's going to bring. We all have our concerns about that, but we'll see. Okay. All right, conservatives. And if you're not a conservative, here's my message, about conservatism and its status. There's all kinds of talk that the Republican Party has to be completely reformed, torn down, all because of these January 6th insurrectionist terrorism that happened. It is a dispiriting day, when your side loses the presidency. But there's no reason to give up hope, because we are winning. I mean, I'm going to go through them. We are winning. Listen, we are dispirited with the election results. We are dispirited about the promises of overturning those results. We are dispirited about the big tech crackdowns on free speech. We are dispirited about the socialist agenda that appears to be coming our way. We are dispirited when we hear that well-placed, high-placed politicians say that conservatives need to be deprogrammed. But we are winning. We are winning. No, we didn't win the election. No, we didn't win the Senate. No, we didn't win the White House. But our conservative policies for the last 4 years have won. And it's clear there has been unprecedented prosperity for all Americans, and everybody knows that. Everybody knows that. So it's up to us, and this show will be part of that, to be disciplined, to understand the victory we have already won and the larger battle that we are winning, and to put forth that message of hope and true prosperity that we saw exhibited prior to the pandemic, and even, more recently emerging from the pandemic. We need to remind people, now is not the time to go hide in the shell. Now is the time to be a disciple for conservative values, and remind people of the tremendous victories we have earned in these last few years. It may not be clearly evident to you right now, but our team, our side, our conservative side has put a massive amount of points on the board. I mean, the game is never over. I mean, there is no end to this political game, if we use that analogy. There's not going to be any total victory ever. There's always going to be political battles. But our team has put up massive points on the board, and we got to understand the way it works. Think of a baseball game. In some innings, we score a lot of runs. In some innings, they score some runs, and then we score runs, and they score runs. And in baseball, there's a time limit to it, of course, in terms of innings. but it's the give and take. So the fact that they're scoring a few runs right now doesn't matter, but they're going to actually go negative on the board. They're going to lose some runs soon. I'll talk to you about that in a second. But we have put up massive points on the board in the last 4 years, and we are clearly ahead. Donald Trump today, in his shorter farewell speech, he gave a longer one last night, but at a joint base Andrews, before he got on, I guess it was still Air Force One to fly to Mar-a-Lago in Florida. He referred to the miracle of his administration. Now, I'm not exactly sure what he was thinking about, but I'm pretty sure he was talking about the tremendous successes that our nation has had under his direction. But it's not Donald Trump. It wasn't a miracle. It was plain old-fashioned conservative policies. The same policies that grew this nation into the greatest economic and military force for right, military might for right, to use a King Arthur term, an economic prosperity the world has ever known. Conservative policies built this country. Conservative policy boomed under Reagan in the 80s, and conservative policies skyrocketed, boomed under President Trump prior to the pandemic. And people know that. So I get what the president was saying, but it's not a miracle. It's good old-fashioned conservatism. You know, if we have time before our guest comes on at the end of the show, I'm going to go through an incredible list of accomplishments. You know most of them, but the Biden administration is going to try to undo some of that. No, they're not overtly trying to undo prosperity, but prosperity is less interest to them than their left-wing agenda is. They are agenda-driven, regardless of how it impacts people. Trump, when he said put America first, his first goal is how's it going to impact everyday Americans? Now, that's what he stated. Of course, nobody lives to that exactly. The Biden administration has made it clear they're going to undo what policies it can. They're going to try to undo the winning. And President Trump was right about that. We have been winning. And we are winning. I'm going to talk more about that in a second, too. And just in the news, there were two tremendous examples that demonstrate how even the other side knows that it's conservatives that were winning. First, Janet Yellen, who's going to be the new Treasury Secretary. She was former Federal Reserve Director. Is that the title? He said that the 2017 conservative tax cuts gave American businesses a huge boost, and that she's comfortable that hiking those taxes or repealing those taxes is not an immediate focus for Mr. Biden. That's an admission from one of the highest ranking cabinet secretaries in Biden's administration that Trump won when it came to our economy. Conservative policies won for our economy. Now, I didn't see the article, but I heard on a radio show today, Rush Limbaugh show, pretty credible source, that even a New York Times article said that the goal for the Biden administration when it comes to the economy is to try to return it to the pre-pandemic levels that Trump achieved. Can you believe that? The New York Times saying that. The New York Times. They are even admitting that conservative policies won for America's economy. Points on the board. In this game, you can lose points. In the political game, you can lose points. Not always ever upward score. Is there any sport where you can lose points? I'm trying to think about that. You can use yardage in football. Any sport where you actually lose points? I guess in tennis you can be deducted a point for a flag. Anyway, I don't know. But in this game, trust me, the Biden administration and the liberals and the progressives and the socialists are going to lose points for their team. I'm absolutely confident of it. Don't forget, they own everything now. The only silver lining to losing the Senate, in addition to the White House, is that they have no boogeyman anymore. They can't blame it on Trump. They can't blame it on a Republican Senate blocking their policies. They own it, and they will blow it. They will lose points for their team, and they've already started. Let me show you this. They've already started. Apparently, this is, I guess, already been done in one of Biden's first executive orders. Again, remember we said the agenda is more important than the prosperity of actual Americans. Joe Biden is going to revoke the Keystone Pipeline. That's a pipeline that created over 20,000 high-paying jobs in America and in Canada, that will keep America energy independent. It will keep prices low for fuel costs for Americans. But does Joe Biden care anything about that? Does the left care anything about that? No. They just care about appeasing the radical environmentalists on the left. Just like the TCI gas tax we're going to talk about in a little while is nothing more than appeasing radical environmentalists on the left. So already Joe Biden's team is losing points. Joe Biden is losing points for their team. I don't think American people are going to be happy that 20,000 American jobs are lost, their fuel costs are going to go up, and that America is going to be less energy independent. It's up to us to help get that message out, okay? We are winning. You need to realize it, and you need to tell people about it on social media, private discussions, wherever you do it. Now, and this is part of the ongoing conversation that has to be had in our state, in our nation, in our society. You and I, we're just going to sit back and complain. Today I'm telling you, there's no reason to complain. It's not the best day, but we're winning. We're winning despite the few runs their team scored in the last few months. We are winning. Think of the state houses across America. Despite losing the Senate and the White House, at the state level, there are now more. If you want to look at Republicans as conservatives, that's not always true, but that's the measure. There are more Republicans, state senators and representatives than there were prior to the election. There are more state house chambers, the Senate or the House, controlled by Republicans than ever before, or than before the election, as with governors. The election fraud we're so concerned about, and rightfully so, that absolutely occurred. We don't know if it would have been enough to change the election, but you know what? That's behind us now. Cancel that, but we have won that battle. Do you understand that? We have won that battle. That's another area we're winning. Why? Because we've exposed the election fraud. We have exposed the unconstitutionality of so many of the procedures and rules that were put in place by biased courts and biased state officials. State legislatures, at least the ones who care, are going to be doing something about it. We've had reps right on this show. We had a rep from Pennsylvania and a senator from Michigan right on this show and said, in their state, you damn well better believe there's going to be election reform in our states. So that the fraud that happened last year, and we know it happened to some extent, isn't the main concern. Was always, for me, was let's make sure we have election integrity in the future. So even despite the election loss, we are winning that battle too. So again, if we remain loyal to our conservative and constitutional values, if we become engaged in informing more of our fellow citizens about how those values have won for the people of this state and for this country, well, not so much a state, we need to be that example for others to emulate. Prosperity is what's going to unite us all, not words from a podium. And we must remain faithful to the principle of one nation under God. Pray, go to church, go to synagogue, go to temple. So this is your challenge. We can either curl up in a little ball and say, woe is us because of this administration, or we can recognize that we are winning and we can join with others and spread that winning. This show, that's what this show is about, In the Dugout. This show is about spreading the good word of how conservatism can improve the lives of Rhode Islanders and Americans. It's a positive message, and it's a winning message. You may not see that here in Rhode Island, but across America, it's a winning message. Let the cancel culture children do their thing. Let them continue to live in Never Never Land. That's not going to stop us. We're just shifting to go somewhere else. They're not going to beat us, to use the opposite of what we're not going to lose because some Twitter CEO or Facebook CEO or YouTube or Google CEO or executive tries to shut us down. We're going to find a way. And I hope you'll join. Keep tuning into this show, and we're going to find that way. We got a transition happening in this state, as we mentioned earlier, with Governor McKee soon to be. I don't believe he's anywhere near as far left wing as Gina Raimondo became. Now, we also thought Gina Raimondo might be a moderate governor. We were wrong about that. We'll see with Dan McKee. Unity. So here's another area where I think Biden is going to lose points for his team. He's trying to position himself in his speech as the great unifier. He contradicted himself so severely. I mean, everybody talked about Trump stepping on his own message. I mean, if anybody takes an objective look at just some of the few things that Biden said today, that they can't possibly exist in the same speech, but yet they did. And this is going to set the tone for what's going to happen in future months and years. Well, if he makes it that long, that's a whole nother issue we'll talk about another time. Already you're hearing from the left now. They're starting to talk about Biden's cognitive decline. The left wants Harris. They don't want Biden. Biden's not a socialist, but he can be controlled by socialist influencers. Harris is a socialist, pretty much, in my view. That's what the left wants. So you're already hearing admissions now of the cognitive decline of Joe Biden that all of us were laughed at last year for daring to mention when we all knew it was true. All right. Biden said today, disagreement must not lead to disunion. That's right. It shouldn't. But he's trying to position himself as the great unifier. He said today, now tell me if this is a unifying statement. He, again, I don't have the text in front of me, but from what I remember hearing, he accused Americans of being guilty of distrusting those who don't look like you. In other words, you're racist, you're bigots, you're homophobes, you're misogynists. Stop it. Gina's words, knock it off. Is that a unifying message to accuse basically white people of distrusting people of color naturally? Wow. It takes leadership. You got to lead by example if you want to achieve anything. You know, he said again, and he said it before, he said it in his campaign, he said it in his, in every speech, and he said it today. He wants to be a president for all Americans, even those who didn't vote for me. I'm a president of the United States of America. And then a few minutes later, he says, but one of our main missions is to defeat the white supremacists and domestic terrorists. White supremacy is a myth. Domestic terrorist with regard to the January 6th incident is a myth. And it's a divisive, not a unifying, it's a divisive comment. Pretty much, I'm sure that all of the 74 million who voted for Trump and many, many others would feel. And here's a guy trying to say he's the great unifier. Is that unifying leadership? To allow, we saw the militarization in the National Guard there, to allow the commentary to go forth that National Guard were white supremacists or radical right, and to actually vet people and actually vet people and to remove people from their posts because they might have some Republican tie or extremist tie, as they say. Republican is extremism now. Don't forget, it's the same thing. Joe Biden didn't do anything to say, hey, come on, this is the National Guard. Let's not be political about it. If you're going to be a leader, you have to lead. You can't be silent on the important issues of our time. Just like he is silent on the impeachment. An impeachment that will be incredibly divisive to America. Joe Biden is silent on it, and his silence is tacit approval of what's going on. His silence is divisive. Is that unifying leadership? Was it unifying leadership when he was silent on the Great Summer Riots that his team was perpetrating? Was he silent when, yes, he was. He was also silent when Vice President Harris told them, now Vice President Harris, back then, told them to keep going, that it's their duty to keep rioting and protesting. Not those words exactly, but that was the gist of it. And then just think of the divisiveness. Again, it's this passive-aggressive attitude, this whole militarization. I was wrong yesterday, I think. 2 nights ago, Tucker Carlson said the militarization of D.C. was a Democrat-inspired call, that they were calling the troops in. Yesterday on the show, I questioned, well, do they have the authority to do that? I mean, Biden's not president, and the D.C. mayor, I don't know if she can bring in that many. But apparently it was. Apparently these troops were brought in by the Democrats somehow, whether they negotiated or had some authority, I'm not aware of. I don't know, but it was at their behest anyway. But the implication is that Trump supporters and conservatives are dangerous. Therefore, we need this massive troop presence to protect Joe Biden and his followers from the dangerous conservatives, from the dangerous Trump supporters. Those, what did he call them? Those insurrectionist terrorists. Well, and that's not what Biden called them, but what others have, from January 6th. That is divisive. How does that make you feel? I know how it made me feel. Is this a guy I want to rally around who thinks me and others who think like me are dangerous to the point that they need to bring in armed guards with belt-fed machine 50 caliber machine guns. So I got to say that for a first day in office, the first message, despite the false warning from the other occupants of Never Neverland, not a good day for me as far as I'm concerned. Not a very hopeful day for me, not a very unifying day for me. I don't know about you. All right, before we bring on our guests and talk about the transportation climate, and just a few things on Donald Trump. You know, like so many times, you know, the speech last night he gave, the farewell speech, the final farewell speech again this morning at Joint Base Andrews. I mean, that's the Donald Trump everybody wished they would have seen the last few years. But again, how he was gracious. He certainly wasn't fawning over Joe Biden. Why should he be? But don't forget, this was a man. Again, you're going to see the difference. This was a man that from even before he assumed office, over 4 straight years, has been under daily, constant attack. Who of us would not have reacted in some way that wouldn't be like us if we were constantly and publicly and massively under such attack? Has Trump made mistakes? Absolutely. You know, it was with regard to the January 6th incident, and with regard, you know, there was so many rumors going around, and I read them just to be informed. Like I said, yes, I never shared them with you. Of, you know, something big's going to happen. You know, first he promised something big on January 6th as far as evidence that could overturn the election. He promised it. He did. And then there was nothing. Now, whether they didn't get to it because of everything changed after the riots or not, I don't know. The Capitol Hill riot, I don't know. But he promised big game-changing evidence. It never happened. The far right-wing media, the YouTube journalists, whatever you want to call them, were promising that a day of reckoning was coming for the deep state criminals who may have committed everything up to treason, fixing elections and blah, 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 and whatever else. That never happened. The fake news is everywhere, on the left and on the right. It's everywhere. That's why you need to have independent thought, unlike the other team. That's why we're going to continue winning. Because you will think independently. You will look at the situation. You will deem what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. We might hope or certainly believe in certain things, but we're not going to blindly believe in things like the left does, like those occupants and residents in Never Neverland. They believe whatever they're told. No questions asked. No critical thinking, no independent thought. And it's very sad when we see lawmakers immediately jumping to implement policies based on false narratives, without any vetting, without any due process, without any public debate. It's very sad. And then there was one final item, and then we'll get to our guest. The media is portraying it as the swamp beat Trump. Trump apparently had issued some kind of executive order early in his presidency when he was fighting the swamp, saying that no one in his administration could become a lobbyist to Congress afterwards. Didn't want his people to become part of it. Well, I guess yesterday he rescinded that executive order. And the left, of course, saying, see, Trump lost to the swamp. Well, I see it a different way. And I see it as the ultimate call to action for us. I think this is Trump saying, you know what? If they're going to have lobbyists trying to influence government, our team is going to have lobbyists too. We can't win if, just like China with trade, we can't win if they're playing unfairly or they're playing hardball and we're playing softball. If hardball is the name of the game, then we got to play it too. And lobbying right now is the name of the game. As much which it wasn't so, it's the name of the game. So I think Trump, by freeing up people in his administration to lobby, is basically saying, we're going to have our own counter swamp, kind of like counterintelligence. You got your spies, you got your agents, we're going to have our spies, and we're going to have our agents. And let's go at it and let's see what happens. Okay, so that's enough on national news. Right now in Rhode Island, our governor has recently signed us up for the Transportation and Climate Initiative. So let's rather than me re-explain it to you, let's bring on the man who probably knows more about it than anybody, at least from a center-right free market perspective. Let's bring on Mr. Paul Craney. Paul, are you with us?
I'm here.
Good. Turn your video on. I can hear you. And of course, as always, let's see, where is Paul?
I think you have to let me turn on my video, it says.
All right, Larry, can you help Mr. Craney? Let me see if I can. Oh, there we go, Paul. All right, before we formally, our first order of business, I've got my Rhode Island hat on. What do you got for us today for In the Dugout?
So I'm in Massachusetts, and if you look behind me, you can see it says, yes, the best. Those are newspaper articles from when the Sox won. My household is a big, New England sports fan, but I'm originally from New Jersey. And the one team I still follow from that area are the New York Rangers. So I got one of their teams. Yeah, not the Devils.
They're in Massachusetts, you're a Rangers fan, huh?
I know, that's the only team. But the Bruins and the Rangers don't have a strong rivalry.
They used to when I was a kid, they did, yeah.
Yeah, they're still part of the original six, those two teams, but it's not like the Bruins versus the Canadians or the Rangers versus the Devils. It's not quite the same. I know sometimes the Bruins and the Rangers trade players back and forth, which usually shows that there's some friendship within the teams. So I'm still, hockey just started, so I'm pretty happy. I got about 100 days of hockey on TV every night, so.
Well, like me, you go against the grain. You're not a Bruins fan. I'm not a Patriots fan. I think we're both Red Sox fans. So that's
Mike,
great.
I got a question. What professional sports teams does Rhode Island have? I'm just kind of curious about that.
Now, this is a question from a man who described Rhode Island among a group of people as a state that only has a beach and two senators.
And I discovered a lieutenant governor. Of course.
And soon to be a cabinet secretary of commerce. So your questions are illegitimate when it comes to our state, Paul. The big old Massachusetts. All right, let's talk about, since it was. Now we're going to pin this on Massachusetts. It was your governor, largely, our governor, also largely, who are some of the lead proponents for the Transportation and Climate Initiative. You are the director of the Mass Fiscal Alliance. I assume you're a 501c3 or C4?
Mass Fiscal is a C4.
You categorize yourself as a think tank?
No, we're an advocacy organization, so we hold state house lawmakers accountable to their voting record. But there is a 501c3 called the Fiscal Alliance Foundation that's been participating in the efforts to try to shed some light on TCI.
But either way, your group has been the lead in organizing a regional coalition against TCI. Again, very quickly, what is TCI? And describe the coalition that I'm proud to be part of that you're leading.
Well, thank you for being part of it. TCI is nothing more than a TAX. It's a tax. It's a way for politicians to not call it a tax, but they want to raise your fuel costs. So gasoline and diesel, they want to make it so expensive that it's perfect. That you don't want to ride your car anymore, but you want to plug into an electric vehicle. Look, I have no problem with electric vehicles. I wish I owned a Tesla. But the problem I have with this is how they want to fund it. They want to make it very expensive for motorists who depend on gas and diesel fuel, so that could subsidize electric vehicles. And to me, that's just crony capitalism. It's a regressive tax. It's going to go on the backs of hardworking people, just so that it could help make some folks that are a little bit elitist, who want electric vehicles but can't afford it, be able to afford it. That's what it comes down to. It's another way of describing it as nothing more than a tax.
So they want you to think way to save the planet from global warming. But as you and I have discussed, it's as with any tax, it's really a money grab, right?
Oh yeah, it's nothing more than a money grab, but they're trying to
Are they
showcase that
playing the environmentalists on this?
I think some of well, first I'll say the environmental lobby, you can never satisfy them. Anytime you give in to them, anytime a conservative says they want to join with the environmental lobby, you should be very warned because it's never enough. You give them an inch, they take a mile. But some of I would consider more honest folks on the left that are in the environmental movement, they've actually criticized TCI because they see it nothing more than a money grab. You and I know some of the nuances, but there's a famous video out there from a TCI hearing in which a kind of a lefty environmentalist from New Jersey who lives in a part of New Jersey. I know this part of Jersey well because I grew up in Jersey, but she lives in a part of Jersey that is very dense and has a lot of industrial sections. And the way she described it is that this is nothing more than I'm paraphrasing, but this is nothing more than rich people wanting to tax poor people so they can get their electric cars.
Yeah, so their electric cars cost less for them. It's the elites. And as you said, this tax, just think of the lower income families, think of the the rural residents who still have to drive to work, still have to shop, still have to take their kids to school, still have to visit family, still have to deliver goods and services. How this is going to regressive in that nature hurt them more than anyone else. But you're right. So the elites can have their left-wing agenda and have their subsidies for their green automobiles, right?
Yeah, that's what it comes down to.
All right.
I mean, the bigger problem with the environmental movement here is we have to pause for a second and say, I mean, think about it. Who are we to think that Rhode Island and Massachusetts can do much of anything to improve the quality air in the world?
I know.
I mean, if you just think about it for a second, it's quite arrogant for our states to say, you know what, we're going to put it on the backs of our taxpayers, and you're welcome. We're going to do this
Paul,
for you.
You're right. Let me say, we got a report coming out next week that we promised in our media release that's going to show the folly of that.
Yeah.
I'll just leave this image. Think of I'm going to say it's more than 5. Think of the number of zeros after the decimal point that the TCI tax in Rhode Island will have on the world's environment.
I know. It's
at least
really,
if I remember, there's at least 5 zeros after the decimal point.
Yeah, it's quite arrogant. And I like to remind people that you can't build a high enough wall to keep that clean air in your state. It just doesn't work like that. And look, I understand we want to improve the environment. My father and my grandfather work in the recycling industry. I grew up as a kid in the recycling industry before it was cool and like green and hip. But there's so many other things that we could do to improve our environment. Passing regressive taxes on people is not one of them.
That's right. And certainly not as we're recovering from a pandemic.
Yeah. And frankly, the pandemic has done more for improving the environment on the transportation side than any carbon tax can ever do.
That's right. All right. All right. So the center, let me go back and share. So the center released a press release yesterday where, thanks to your work, we were one of 20, and we'll show the partners in a minute, but we were one of 20 regional coalition partners from at least 12 states that I could count who signed on to this no TCI tax a letter. Describe the coalition that you've been sharing or building for the last year. And as you're doing that, I'll just show people some of the signatories at the bottom of the letter.
Well, thanks, Mike. And thank you for the center for signing on to that letter. TCI started with 12 states from Virginia all the way to Maine. And
by the way, before we get to that, who's the third state to sign on? Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and who else?
Connecticut.
One of our viewers asked the question on YouTube, and then the DC, right? So
Yeah.
there were 14 states originally interested, but only 3 states signed on plus DC, right? So they're losing support even among their own, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. This was supposed to. They were all supposed to hold hands and jump in the deep end at the same time, but only Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Connecticut joined, and from what I understand, Rhode Island and Connecticut need a legislative vote, so it's not quite a done deal. But basically, this is a coalition from organizations in all these states who oppose TCI, and we think alike. We all support the environment, but we're against regressive gas tax schemes that are called something else, and that's exactly what TCI is. It's nothing more than a TAX. So these are the different groups. Groups from Maine all the way down to I think Virginia that have
The
signed on to
Gassy
it.
Project, our friends in Rhode Island also signed on.
Yeah,
All right, so the coalition, we met a year ago
we did.
at
It
the
was almost to
Cheers
the day.
bar, right? Tell us about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, it was almost a year ago to the day we met this coalition of states and groups, and this was early on. This is before the pandemic, to talk about this issue and kind of get our head around it. It was very new. We held a press conference, Mike, that you were part of, along with groups from Connecticut, New Hampshire, Vermont, and Maine, and of course, Massachusetts. We were in the backyard of Governor Charlie Baker, who's a Republican, who's the biggest cheerleader for this concept of increasing gas and diesel.
So what state was it that led the charge on TCI, Paul?
Massachusetts, unfortunately.
Okay, all right. Just wanted to get that in. Okay.
Yeah, we apologize on behalf of Massachusetts. Oftentimes we bring you people like John Kerry, Elizabeth Warren, and today we're putting forward a regressive gas tax. So on behalf of Massachusetts, we apologize, and I have to always do this.
We apologize to everyone for Rhode Island signing on too. So,
but yeah, it was a great that was a great event. And then the pandemic hit shortly thereafter. Everything was kind of put on hold. We were cautiously optimistic that because the pandemic's effect on how people commute, a lot of these states would reconsider this. Plus, pandemic is much more important than I would argue some of these frivolous tax policies. And a lot of people were economically suffering. People lost their jobs, their businesses almost overnight. It really changed the way of life. But the pandemic has done more to lower carbon emissions in cars and vehicles than any type of tax policy. So
well, in fact, that's one of the points that even beyond the pandemic, Paul, the current federal and state policies, that even the TCI group admits that even without TCI, carbon emissions are going to reduce by another 19 or 20% over the next 5 years, and that doing TCI will only reduce emissions from this region, which is a tiny part of the world, by only another 5 or 6%. So we don't even have to do anything, and we're going to be reducing carbon emissions from this region. Isn't that right?
Yeah, it's really a solution in search of a problem.
That's right.
And that event that we went to last year before the pandemic, TCI had said, do nothing, follow current laws, follow technology and advancements, and carbon emissions will be reduced by 19% over 10 years. And remember, this is when people were all, driving to work every day. Then the pandemic hit, and everyone's lives have changed. And what was interesting, Mike, I don't know if you could put that letter back up, but there's a part in there that we really highlighted, and I want your audience to know. I think when these environmental lobby groups push their agendas, they know it's so unpopular that they have to be very opaque and, in my opinion, a bit dishonest in order for this kind of stuff to pass. So instead of calling it just a gas tax to subsidize electric vehicles, they know that would never go. Or a way to, put a backdoor carbon tax in the transportation sector, they know that would never go. But if you look in here, we talk about how in December of 2019, they said they want to lower carbon emissions by 25%. And that requires 17-cent gas tax. So 17 cents for 25% reduction. Then the pandemic hit. In December of last year of 2020, they said, oh, we're going to change that. Instead of 25, it's going to go to 26% reduction, but it's only going to cost 5 to 9 cents.
Completely disingenuous.
How does that work? How does it so that you can lower the tax and have more of an economic benefit, environmental benefit. We all know this only works by jacking up the tax so high to
and the
get people
tax,
from
right,
driving.
the tax is designed to make you, punish you for driving, so you'll drive less.
Yeah. So again, this is, in my opinion, they never answered this question. There's a lot of reporters or people in the media who are
Well, they
very
got two different
sympathetic.
stories going, right?
Yeah, they do. But this is where they need to be really pressed. So in your state's a great example. You have a new, kind of governor, and a new legislature. I think pressing this point with them is very valid. I think it kind of was missed last December, but it has to be asked. How is it that your tax decreased, but your environmental benefit increased? And what I think they're just doing is they're including the pandemic in
It's
their,
fake news. It's fake
yeah, they're
news.
including the pandemic in their benefit, which is so out of control of what TCI can do.
All
They
right,
can
so
kind of keep
we're
track
going
of it.
to we'll give a little preview here to anyone watching when we release our report next week. Since we're having a gubernatorial change in our state, and I don't, and the current lieutenant governor, soon to be governor, is at least ostensibly and in his spoken words a big small business guy. This is a tax also on small business. We are going to ask him. We're gonna make a call for him to pull Rhode Island out of this regional TCI compact. I assume that you would agree with that plan of
Yeah,
action.
I think that's, yeah, definitely. These small states like Rhode Island, I would even argue Massachusetts is relatively small compared to some of the bigger states. I don't see why they would ever join TCI. You're just going to fleece your commuters just so it can benefit some of these bigger states. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, and this will be an important. I think this will be a big signal for this new governor, which direction he's going to be going. Is he going to keep, as I was just saying on my show, like Joe Biden is doing, who's canceling all these, Keystone Pipeline jobs? Is Dan McKee going to be more concerned with the liberal left agenda and pleasing his left wing, or is he going to be actually more concerned about jobs and small businesses in our state? This is a job killing tax, right?
That's what it is. It is, and especially for a small state, it makes no sense. But what's
Right.
also, I think, interesting is that the fact that your previous governor did this right as she was leaving the state.
I know.
And like the door wasn't
coward.
even shut, and she was,
What a
this
coward.
was signed.
Didn't
So
campaign on it, didn't
yeah,
talk about it, and then does it and then leaves. What a
yeah, I
coward.
think anytime you have a politician who's termed out, if you will, or on their way out, and they start signing big pieces of legislation, taxpayers in those jurisdictions should be very upset by that. And I'm hoping that your new governor will see that for what it was. It was nothing more than a way to, put a line in her resume that she did something. In reality, it's like she'll never have to deal with this. And her constituents are going to be talking to the new governor instead of her to deal with the repercussions of what this brings to it.
All right, last question for you, Paul. Thank you for joining us. I think one of the coolest points made in this whole that I've seen in the last year came from the New Hampshire governor, Sununu. Now, Sununu right away took New Hampshire out of consideration for imposing this tax. He gets it. I can't be putting this tax on people and small businesses right now. But he also went on to say, and I think this is a great argument for Rhode Island. If Rhode Island were to pull out, as New Hampshire has already done, and states like Massachusetts and Connecticut do implement and raise their gas taxes, what a wonderful economic competitive advantage and opportunity it would be for Rhode Island to have gas prices that are 10, 15, 20, 30 cents less than our neighboring states. People will be flooding into our state to buy gas and other sundries here.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I live right on the New Hampshire border in Massachusetts. I'm about 5 miles from New Hampshire, and it's a way of life up here. People are constantly crossing the border, and within just a few feet of the New Hampshire border, there's shopping stores and a gas station.
Yeah.
If Rhode Island, if your state leaders had, some forward-thinking ideas, they would say this is a wonderful opportunity to
To
start
finally have a
driving,
leg up on our neighboring
yeah,
states.
driving commerce to the state from all these border towns of Massachusetts.
Uh,
I mean, let me tell you, Mike, I think both of our states are in a maybe a photo finish race to see how we can bankrupt our state
a
quicker.
race to the bottom.
So this is one of these weird opportunities where your state could say, wait a second, let's do a quick U-turn on something and start driving commerce. In Massachusetts, we have a gauntlet of tax hikes
And I
on the
promise.
table.
Do you think that only some states would implement it without others, or do you think it has to be, they have to get more than those 4? They have to get back to most of those original 13 or 14 jurisdictions. What is the practical? Do they have a lot of work to go, or is it possible that just a handful of states could do it?
But when they first tried selling this to the public, they said they need a critical mass, and that was the 12 states. And then when it was clear that Sununu was dropping in, other states were getting cold feet, they were asked, TCI was asked, well, what's a critical mass? And then they started floating some of the big states like New York, Virginia, and Pennsylvania. Well, those states didn't join. It's Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and a city of DC of 6 miles. So I use the words against them. What's a critical mass? Is Rhode Island and Massachusetts, Connecticut? No, of course not. That makes up only 7% of the geography of the 12 states that have started. So clearly, this was a huge belly flop for them. But make no mistake, you know how the environmental lobby is. They're going to come at this really hard for the next year and a half, and that's why it's so important for us to continue to keep the other states out of it, and frankly, hold our politicians accountable in the states that have it. We're not going to let Governor Baker and Lieutenant Governor Karen Polito forget that they're the ones that did this. We're going to make sure our taxpayers and business owners are aware of this. In 5 to 10 years, when gas prices in Massachusetts are just as expensive as California, we're going to tell people, well, this is when it happened, when they
That's
signed
where we're headed.
TCI
That's where
for
Rhode
it.
Island could be headed too. Yep.
When businesses are fleeing the
Paul
state.
Craney. Yep. Well, we're already having that problem here in Rhode Island. It's been a lifelong problem where we're dreading an announcement probably for the end of the month that Rhode Island's going to lose one of its 2 House congressional seats because of we are driving people away. We'll find out. Apparently, we're right on the edge. But anyway, Paul Craney, Mass Fiscal Alliance, we thank you for leading this anti-TCI tax regional coalition, for putting this open letter together. And we will have you back on the show soon, maybe to discuss our report and maybe to discuss any other update you have for this this backward-thinking, ill-timed money grab. Paul Craney, thank you.
Thanks, Mike, for having me on, and thank you for your advocacy.
All right, Paul, thank you very much. All right, folks, well, we'll end our show here. Again, we're going to beat this TCI tax, and we're going to keep winning. We are winning. May not be evident today of all days, but we are winning, especially nationally. The other teams, they're at bat right now. They're scoring a few runs. But like I said, they're going to be taking some runs off the board. This TCI tax is a way to take a few runs off the board here in Rhode Island if we can get together and scream, this is not the time to be raising gas taxes on families and small businesses already struggling to recover from this pandemic. It's insane, right? This is never land stuff. We're going to keep putting forth a positive message to you. We're going to keep showing how conservatism can enhance quality of life, both economically and from a freedom to live your life the way you want point of view. That's the secret. The left wants to restrict your prosperity and restrict your choices in life. They're going to blow it. They're going to take points off the board. We're going to keep winning. For In the Dugout, Mike Stenhouse,